Hey, it's Todd. I'm here to talk about some hidden gems in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. So here we have it, Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition. Uh, I don't know if other editions had this. I don't remember in earlier editions, but 5th edition, I was surprised in that, the game is basically totally runnable with just the player's handbook. So from the first, the DMG for this edition is very much sort of an optional tool. I know when you see new people coming in and they want to know what materials to get for 5th edition, a lot of people will obviously suggest a player's handbook. They will probably also suggest a monster manual if they're going to referee the game. Perhaps Xanathars and now maybe Mordenkainen's will also be thrown in there. But the DMG also is often put as maybe the last of the three big books to pick up. And it's understandable because you really don't need it. For most things, you're going to be totally fine with what's in the PHB. And, it can seem that there's definitely things like monsters and, creatures for you to use in your game is probably more important than a bunch of optional rules and things that might not come into play at all, if ever. Particularly if you're going to run pre-made adventures. If you're going to pick up and run some of the campaign books, it's going to have, everything you need in there, even most of the monsters, or at least unique monsters. So sort of what do you need the DMG for? That said, there's a lot of great stuff in here. I don't necessarily agree with all the advice and things that they say, but certainly there's a lot of content here. And some of it is, I think, a little bit of what I would call a hidden gem, something that you don't, maybe doesn't even show up in the table of contents, and it might be something that you pass over on your way to looking up how to calculate, CR or some other kind of technical detail that you're looking for, but you stumble upon it and it can be one of those kind of aha, moments. Oh, this thing is there that I had been looking for, or I didn't know that I was looking for until I needed it, or just a good tool that you can use for a variety of things. So I thought I would go over a couple of these that I found that may not be the things that you would necessarily buy this book for originally or ever open the book up originally to look at, but maybe once you know they're there, they can become things that you can add to your arsenal. So I've got them tabbed out here with some bookmarks. Let's see if I can find this. Let's see the first one. I think the first one. Okay, here we go. So the first one here is what they call framing events. Basically, the way they explain it, right up here, is it's just something of interest to sort of hook the players into something. Just something special, out of the ordinary, unusual that may be happening at the moment, or if you're going to use it for something in the future that you can plan on happening, that gives you something to lure the players, in with. You can see they have a great list here. And again, the purpose the table's for, right, is this kind of idea of what you can lure your players in. But it can also be something if you ever just you want to check for something random happening in a town. I usually like to think of things that if the players leave a village or a place, things happen in their interim, or maybe there's stuff happening when they get back. And this is a great kind of list of things to have take place in the town. They don't even have to be there for these if you're using them. If you want to use it outside of the purpose that they list it for here, right? If you don't have to use it for the purpose of being a kind of a player hook. You can use it for the purpose of just, hey, I want to have an event that happened while they were gone. And, they were out in the dungeon. What happened? Something happened that week in the town. What is it? And, you can go down the list here. I'm just going to move this over so I can see it a little bit better. You have an anniversary of a monarch, an anniversary of an event. If there's an arena, maybe an arena event. Maybe a caravan came by. The circus came to town. Some kind of NPC showed up. There was an artistic performance. There was some kind of athletic event. There maybe some important child was born. An important NPC had a birthday. It could be something more esoteric, a planar conjunction, a planetary alignment. It's a New Year festival. There was a solar eclipse. a violent uprising. So you can see from here you have a whole lot of events that you can kind of pull out of your hat if you want to have something happening when the PCs show up to a place, or if you want something to have happened already, something that the PCs can deal with the aftermath. So if there was a violent uprising, one course would be, okay, they're going to show up right when this violent uprising is happening, and I can see how they're going to handle it. Another would be, maybe they show up while this uprising is being planned, right? And what do they do if they get knowledge that, some people, some underground figures are going to stage a violent uprising? How do they deal with that? And then a third one might be, well, it's already happened. How does that change this place? And how do the PCs deal with that change, with those changes? What happens after the violent uprising? Maybe the inn where the characters used to hang out burned down. Maybe some NPCs that they used got killed. Maybe, there was a change in power because of the violent uprising. Whatever it may be, this gives you sort of a tool that you can use to kind of give yourself some inspiration about things that are happening, in towns and sort of civilization when you want to kind of kickstart something that, you don't have anything already in mind for. So that's the first one. That one is on page 79. It's called Framing Events. Oops. The next one is Random Encounters. Random Encounters don't tend to get a lot of play in 5th edition. I know it's obviously very GM, DM, referee dependent, but I think it's more the exception to the rule now that random encounters come into play. And I think part of that is because 5th edition has taken on a much more narrative heavy structure. And in that kind of structure, the sort of excess that comes with having random encounters, or potential excess, is seen as being sort of wasteful or removing the focus. It's kind of like which could be annoying if you're playing, computer RPGs, when you need to get your heroes from town A to town B, and that's what you want to do. And then around you hit the road, and all of a sudden in front of you, just random account, battles just pop up like a Final Fantasy. I think of Final Fantasy VII. I'm trying to get across this space. I just want to get to this other town where the main quest is going, and then I'm just getting encounters popping up, and they're just annoying. And at a certain point, you don't need the experience. At a certain point, they're not giving you any new information. You just want to get through them as quickly as possible, and they just slow things down. So I understand the impulse to just say, you know what, get rid of them. I don't want them. But what I like about random encounters is that they can be surprising both to me and the players. And they don't have to be random. If I roll up, my party is moving from town A to town B, and I roll up, say, bandits on the road, they could just be bandits. Or maybe I can think about how those bandits may tie into what the players did in the town they left, or what they are going to do in the town they came, or any number of things. I can tie them together, and suddenly that becomes something. And if you run encounters so that they're not always combat encounters, they don't have to be long, they don't have to be slow, and they can be more interesting than just roll initiative. Right? Maybe the bandits are willing to talk. Maybe they're willing to trade. Maybe you could hand them some gold and they'll go upon their way. And then the PCs have choices. Maybe they can pay off the bandits, go along their way. Maybe they can, attack the bandits and then take them to town B, hoping to then earn some kind of, earn some cred with this new town they're going to, because, hey, look, they just took care of this, bandit menace. Maybe they go around them. Maybe they see the bandits in the distance and they decide to take a detour through the forest, and they either, nothing happens. They just go, they just keep going. And then you can also deal with what happens if they leave those bandits alone, right? So the party sees these bandits. Maybe they could take care of them. They decide not to. They decide to go around the way, pay them off, whatever. And it's kind of like that, the Spider-Man, origin story. So Spider-Man lets the guy go, then that guy ends up committing a crime that hurts Spider-Man, personally. If you let those bandits sit there, then maybe the next people who come down that road get victimized by the bandits, and maybe those people are meaningful. So this little random encounter has ended up changing the flow of the game. It's affected the world, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's good for, people's worlds, your campaigns, to get kind of shaken up a little bit and not get too static, and not become too just, stuffy, stuck in their ways. I do think, though, that some of the advice they give here, me personally, I find a little bit off, but, it's a your miles may vary type thing. Like, for instance, they say that, hey, maybe you want to trigger a random encounter when the players are getting off track and slowing down the game. I don't know what that means, but given that if the party's maybe getting off track and they're slowing down the game, I don't know that's the best time to then throw an encounter at them, which will have depending on your party and depending how you are as a GM, have at least a fairly good chance of slowing the game down even further. Hey, I want to speed up the game. Let's throw in a possible combat. Probably not. That being said, in other cases, maybe it will snap them out of it. And again, if they are going off track, so for instance, you need the players to get to town B. They leave town A, but they just start dicking around, doing whatever. Some bandits show up. You could tie those bandits into town B, or at least into whatever they're working on that's supposed to push them towards town B. And maybe that will snap them back to, oh yeah, we have to get over to that town B. Right? We got to get over there. That gives us some urgency. So there might be some truth to it, but it seemed a little funny to say throw in random encounters if things are going slowly. And some of the other advice, when the characters stop for a short or a long rest, I think this is kind of key. They really should do more with this because, you'll hear a lot of talk, depending on how technical, how deep you get into sort of the 5th edition maths and stuff, about how many encounters you should have in a day, how often you should let your party, do short rests. People get stuck with parties that will, do one combat and kind of a cloud of dust and then head off to rest. And sort of how do you prevent that kind of behavior? Because, ultimately it's about resource management, right? And the powers and abilities are going to recharge on short rests or long rests. So it is human nature. If you can get away with fighting an encounter and you can use all your best abilities, you can go 100% in that encounter and then back off and rest so that you can do it all over again. That's what you will do. And if you, as a referee, as a dungeon master, if you allow a party to do that, they will tend to do that because it is the most efficient thing to do. It's not efficient in the fictional time frame because you're spending days to do something that you could do in one day. If there were 3 encounters in this area, you could do them all in one day, or you could do them in 3 days, right? But if the time isn't important, and often it is not as critical as it should be, then how do you prevent them from just backing away or even not even backing away? I mean, sometimes hole up in this room and we'll just rest in this room for 8 hours. Well, how do you solve that? And random encounters is one. I mean, clearly here what they seem to be advocating is not so much that the encounter itself is random, because if you're saying, hey, when they, it's time for an encounter, if they stop for a short rest, well, it's not really random in the sense that there's no random chance. It's 100% happening. Maybe just what they encounter is random. But it certainly is an answer to that question of what do you do? And it's part of the thing that in classic games, and again, I have other videos where I go into more of kind of classic gaming and I talk about things like, random encounters, but there were more ticking clocks than there are in 5th edition. And some of those clocks were set by random encounters. And if you knew that you basically were going to get a potential random encounter check once per fictional hour, and they used to have very set sort of steps of time. So you knew that like one exploration turn was 10 minutes. So you had 6 of those turns to 1 hour. And you knew that certain things were going to use up 1 turn, basically. Almost anything you would do, I think it was 120 feet walking, or if you're doing certain things, you knew that you were ticking off those segments of 10 minutes each, that you could pretty well judge what was going to happen, that you were going to, at least how your time was being allotted. And so then you could kind of know as a player and your character, I got to keep moving, I got to hustle, because that I'm getting at that point where they're going to roll again for a random encounter, and random encounters, particularly in classic games, can be super deadly. So I want to avoid as many of those as I can. So I got to move. But there's a lot less of an emphasis in that in 5th edition. But certainly as a way to prevent parties, or at least give them pause when they're thinking of taking excessive short or long rests, or taking them in spots that their characters fictionally should be extremely dangerous places, random encounters are a great way to do that. And they give some other reasons in here, for why to do them. If just having random encounters on their own is not enough. And then they have the rules about checking at it, and they also have some tables. Tables here. This is forest encounters. What to roll a forest? I think they have some other ones. No, they don't. I guess it's just a sample. But they have rules in here, or they give you guidelines for how to generate your own tables. Older books, older editions have tons of these tables. If this appeals to you, if you want to say like, wow, I'd like to have tables for these different biomes, these different environments, you can look up older editions, and there's tons of resources on the net where you can help you build or have pre-made encounter tables for different areas. It's really good to make your own if you have the time, just because then you can really customize them with the things that you want. So for instance, this forest encounter table is going to be pretty generic. But if you have certain creatures or certain factions or, forces of enemies that are operating in this area, you're going to want to add them to your table. So maybe you don't want a displacer beast. You're going to want, I don't know, some kind of, if you have maybe some kind of, I'm not even sure what it'd be, like goblins or whatever it is, kobolds, lizard men, whatever creatures that are maybe are important to this area in your geography of your campaign, put them in there. So, but it's a good thing to do if you have the time. But there, like I said, there are plenty of generic resources out there if you need them. So on to the next one. NPC party members. So here we're talking about retainers, and then I think they go over here. They've got hirelings. I did another video on hirelings. I love them. I think they're great. I think it's something, again, that was more of a feature in classic versions of the game that is not so much in 5th edition. But they're amazing resources and, inspiration and ways for a referee to kind of push the game in different ways, and create tension for the players, because these NPCs, they're for hire, which means that they're vulnerable to being bribed or scared or threatened. They can become wedges that you can use, to get to different party members. They can be ways for you to push plots that are going on if things were to happen to these, these individuals, or if they could have information. They could be sources of knowledge if you want to give the PC something. There are ways for you to really make them, give the players windows to show their characters' colors. If someone is good and but they treat their hirelings like garbage, that's, you've shown a window onto them. Same in reverse. If someone's evil but they're showing great kindness to their hirelings, that tells you something. And they're also a way for the party to really take it upon themselves to create the sort of greater unit that they want. I think you often hear about, you'll hear dungeon masters talking on Reddit saying, how can I fix this? My party doesn't have this. How can I get them a magic user because they don't have one? Or how can I get them this because they don't have it? For me as a dungeon master, I don't worry about any of that. If the party doesn't have a magic user and they want one, well, they can go to town and ask around and see if there are any magic users willing to go out and adventure. And if there are, they can bargain with them, pay them, and give them a share of the treasure. And now they have a magic user. I don't need to create one and put one in their path and say, please take me with you, right? I don't need to create my own PC and add him to the party, the kind of dreaded dungeon master player character. I don't need to do that. Like, if they want that help, it's there for them. They can go find it, seek it out, and add it to the party. And are there risks with that? Yeah. Maybe that magic user is not as nice as he seems to be. Maybe he or she will, grab the treasure and run when they least expect it. Or maybe they'll be loyal as bulldogs and fight for their employer to the death. It's all great stuff, and it all adds to the kind of emergent elements that you love when you play, but it's up to the party, right? It puts it in their hands. And here they have some rules for it. Then they go on to villains, which is fine, but not what I'm interested in right now. So the next one is social interactions, but basically reactions. I don't know why they put this so far from some of the other NPC kind of materials, because it's very related to what I just talked about. NPCs in the party and also encounters, really. They kind of go together. And maybe I would have preferred if they could at least talked about it in some fashion under those headings, because it all kind of comes together. But basically, when you're encountering a creature, obviously, most likely an intelligence type creature, how do they react to you? And here they give you, essentially a reaction table. So, you can talk about if they're starting out friendly, if they're starting out indifferent, if they're starting out hostile. Here are some different things you create a difficulty challenge, rating for it. Here they have 0, 10, 20, whatever, and you can roll for them. And so the idea here is that, for example, you have a random encounter, or they're just talking to an NPC, and instead of being locked, particularly in your mind, and how this is going to go, and I think sometimes, I know I've fallen in this rut where like all my shopkeepers will just be kind of mean and ornery. I don't know why. It's just this kind of character I get into with them, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? So by using different reactions, maybe one day he's mean, maybe one day he's nice, maybe he likes this PC, he doesn't like this PC. It sort of forces me to get out of the habit of playing all my NPCs the same. It also might reveal things that you may not have thought to reveal. What if they go down and they see those bandits and they do something you didn't think about, and, in some kind of parlay, and you roll and the bandits roll really well, and suddenly the bandits are very friendly. The players earn their respect, through talking for a parlay. Something totally unexpected for everybody, potentially, right? And for me as a dungeon master, that's great, because what I really want out of all this stuff is to get my imagination flowing, get me inspired, kickstart my brain into thinking about stuff. And it's a great tool for that. And once your players know that they can potentially deal with things other than through the sword, that it's not, you see somebody at 100 yards, roll initiative, that you could potentially try to talk. You could, look and see that's a goblin, and then the goblin's looking back at you, but he's not rushing to face you. Maybe you think, I speak goblin. Maybe I could talk to this guy. Maybe he knows something, he can help me. Maybe he was kicked out of his clan or tribe, and whatever. You have options. And so then those random encounters take on a little bit different flavor when you have options. They don't have to be long, drawn out, just combats waiting to happen. And then you can use those opportunities as a dungeon master for whatever, you'd like to. And as a player, it gives you more options to do things besides just run and gun. So I'm glad that they put them in there. I mean, I might wish that they were more obvious. I think that might be the last one. Yep, that's the last one. So that was it. I thought maybe there was one more, but I guess that's the only one I had. I'm sure I'll think of it as soon as I stop this video, but that is okay. So there you have it. A few of what I would consider to be some hidden gems in the 5th edition Dungeons Master's Guide. If you have the Dungeons Master's Guide, it's worth flipping it open and, maybe reading through or flipping through some sections that you might have skipped over before, because there is some good stuff there. There is good stuff to use. If you don't have a Dungeon Master's Guide, I wouldn't say that it's enough to make you, to make me say run out and buy it. But if you have the other books and you want to learn for some ways to maybe take your game up a notch and just get some of the more technical know-how of what's going on, or just see some different options that are out there, I do think that it's a worthwhile buy in that sense. But I don't disagree with those who say that maybe pick it up third. If you already have a PHB and a monster manual, maybe pick it up, but not before then. But I hope that if you hadn't seen these before, that they may be something you look out look out for and maybe check out in the future. And if you had seen them before, let me know if you use them for their stated purpose or any other purpose. And as usual, if you like this, please give me a thumbs up. It does really help. And if you enjoy these kind of videos, please hit subscribe. That helps me a lot too. That's all I got. I will talk to you later.